Welcome everyone to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition it's Breakthru, brought to us by Data East. Originally an arcade game, Breakthru was ported over the many home consoles and computers at the time, including of course, the Nintendo Entertainment System. The game features only a handful of levels for you to make it through, but it's one of the most intense driving shooters available for the 8-bit console. In classic arcade style, your goal is really to just get to the end of the level and collect the most points, and once you completed the game, you go back to the beginning in the first level to continue racking up your score. So here we go with Breakthru for the NES. You can actually play 1 or 2 player alternating between each other, or you can actually continue if you've lost all your lives in the game and go back to the main menu. If you stay at the main title screen for just a few seconds, you get the story for the game. Basically, an aircraft has been captured, and you're sent off to find it. To do so, you're in a vehicle going really fast through different terrain, shooting at all kinds of different enemies, avoiding landmines and all kinds of other perils, while trying to get to the ends of the levels. This game is extremely tough, especially the first time you're going to be playing it. The key to the game, of course, is going to be repetition of playing it over and over again to learn positions of enemies, as well as just overall how the game works. Besides just being able to drive, the other cool thing is, of course, you can jump and shoot. Shooting enemies ahead of you, of course, giving you big points, and then you're actually able to jump over different obstacles, not just rocks or different things in your direct way, but by using the jump, you can actually jump over the fire of the different enemies. Another key thing to the game, and what you'll learn early, is you actually can slow down as well, and that's a key to avoiding some of the bigger enemies, such as the falling rocks in the first level. When you get near the falling rocks, the goal is to slow down and move up and down in different directions to get the rocks to fall before continuing moving forward. Once you're able to pass the first level, you move on to level 2, the bridge, and things keep getting even more and more hectic. Here, you're introduced to some new vehicles, and the best way, of course, is either slowing down or speeding through the different enemies. Shooting at as many as you can, however, some enemies can't be destroyed, and the best bet is not to go at an enemy head first, especially those that fire, so you don't get a bullet directly into the front of your vehicle. There's a few power-ups in the game, the ability to get 3-way fire, as well as extra lives and such. However, to get them, you'll see capsules floating down on parachutes, and you actually have to time your jump correctly to jump in the air to catch them as they fall. Now, there is momentum in the game, not allowing you to continuously jump non-stop. What'll happen is, when you jump, you'll slow down just a bit, and if you jump right after that, you'll have a slightly slower and shorter jump, eventually going almost nowhere with the jump. But this can still be very useful for avoiding certain enemies. While of course things like giant tanks and other vehicles firing at you can be a big threat, I usually find the enemies coming from the skies, such as the rocks, or later on we're going to have missiles coming at us, to be the toughest to overall dodge in the game. Another thing, of course, as you've noticed with the bridge level, is the large gaps you have to jump between the two bridges, as you can easily see the bridge is broken. Make sure that you have full speed before approaching one of these jumps, so you'll be able to make a very long jump and safely land across to the other side. Completing level 2, we move on now to the prairie, which is level 3. They also give you a little bit of a hint before each level, for example this one telling you to get ready to jump over the ponds with the enemies. Thankfully, the area starts off a little bit more open so you can avoid some of the foot soldiers that are on the ground. Of course, they're all lined up like a firing squad trying to take you out, so hopefully you'll be able to either jump in between them or just jump over them altogether. Thankfully, the more open areas give you plenty of opportunity to move away from a lot of the enemies, allowing you to do some of your more timed jumps. While this level is by no means easy, I do find it a tad bit easier than the previous level, the bridge. The only hard part about the level is the tiny bridges or piers that you have to go across to get over the giant ponds. The helicopter enemies in the sky you'll have to be really careful for though, because not only do they fire missiles straight down at you, the missiles will go off screen and then immediately come back towards you from behind, and you'll have to avoid those as well. Once we're past that, it's time to break the enemy line in the city and move on closer to the aircraft. This is a pretty tough level, and one of the main reasons for that is the ground itself can be extremely distracting, I've always found. The area is also a lot smaller than it was in the prairie, so you have a lot less space to work with here. Staying along the actual median line can sometimes be helpful as far as being able to get in between some of the enemies. You'll usually find me hovering right about that line, except when of course I have to go up or down to avoid landmines or something. After this item drops down, the next item we see is one of the extra lives, so try to do your best to jump up and grab that one from the parachute so we can increase our life counter. Once the street comes back into one, of course, head right back for that median strip as you make your way through. While I don't rack up a ton of points in the game, my main goal really isn't the points, of course. It's trying to actually survive, for me at least, as this game, like I said before, can be rather difficult. There's actually a glitch in the ZX Spectrum version of the game that allows you to non-stop jump, and you'll actually avoid every enemy that way. You'll end up with a score of 0, but you'll never be hit or killed either. The fifth and final level of the game is Recover the Aircraft, so we're at the airfield itself. Thankfully, the main part of the airfield is very large. If you roll into the grass area though, you will be slowed down a little bit, but for the most part it's a really big open area, so for the final level of the game it's not as bad as some of the others. If you see these little gray trucks roll on screen though, immediately make sure you're not directly in front, because they will fire a giant flamethrower like flame out the front and try to kill you that way. One thing I have noticed is that some enemies, when you do land on them, you actually can destroy with a nicely timed landing. This doesn't work on most enemies, but some of the smaller truck-like enemies you can destroy that way. In the smaller areas, also be very careful, of course, of missiles that will be coming down and raining upon you. Thankfully, if you do a nice little jump or slow down just a bit, you should be able to avoid all those missiles. Over here in this big open area, a whole bunch of vehicles will start coming at you from behind, so just be sure to go in between them to avoid getting run into. Make sure, of course, you also have enough speed and you're able to stay away from the helicopter so you can jump over any barrier that you may have to. Here we'll avoid some more missiles as we're getting closer and closer to the aircraft. Once we get past one final stream of enemies, you can sit back and enjoy the ending to Breakthru. So the aircraft ends up blasting off over the ocean, and then you go back to level 1 and start the game all over again. But with that, that's going to wrap up this edition of Play It Through. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.